Hello everyone, welcome to another live hangout here at Voice Essentials. So good to see you all and to hang out for the next 40-50 minutes as we do a bit of a Q&A today, which I know many of you are always keen to interact with. Of course, if you are watching this show as a replay, which the vast majority of you do, so here's some stats. So around about 200 to 250 people will chime in and watch the video, the Hangout live each week, which is in itself very humbling. But then, you know, another 500, so twice that amount of you will jump in and watch this as a replay. And so I want you to know, if you watch this as a replay, it's so good to hang out with you also, albeit not live. And of course, if you are watching if you are, was that a Freudian slip? If you're watching the show as a replay, then then you can also always leave your questions in the comment section below, and I will do my best to answer those. Of course, I get around to answering those comments in the replay videos every couple of weeks because life is busy. Hey, happy, do we say happy Father's Day to everyone in the US and Canada? The reason I'm not certain is because it is not Father's Day here in Australia. We don't celebrate Father's Day until the second weekend of September. It's in September. Linda will remind me because as you all know, Linda, our wonderful moderator, Linda, she's also in Australia, a fellow Aussie, and she lives nearly Linda, would it be 3,000 kilometres south of me in the wonderful island of Hobart, which is a part of Australia. And yeah, so our Father's Day is in September. So it was actually news to me to learn that it was Father's Day. It was all over my Facebook with all of my American friends and colleagues saying Happy Father's Day to everyone. And for a brief moment, I thought, hang on a second, have I missed something? No, I haven't. So anyway, if it is Father's Day in your part of the world, Happy Father's Day. I know for some, Father's Day can be a really wonderful celebration of their fathers and the relationship that they've had with their dads. For others, it can be a hard day because they may be remembering you may be remembering a father that has recently passed or even passed many years ago. Also, it can be a difficult one for those of us who have not had great relationships with our fathers, and so that can have a tension to it. So I hope any which way that the day has gone as relatively well as it could. So there you go. The other interesting fact, little factoids today, is it's the winter solstice. Certainly here in the southern hemisphere. Let us know in the comments if it is the summer solstice for you in the southern and the northern hemisphere. So the winter solstice being the shortest day of the year, the 21st of June. Our summer solstice happens on the 22nd of December. I'm given to suspecting that it's just the exact opposite. Am I right? Am I wrong? You let me know. Yes, it wasn't too chilly this morning. Often, you know, when we get to the depth of winter, it can be quite chilly. It wasn't too bad this morning. The winter solstice today wasn't too rough on us, which was good. Just a quick... we are going to get to your Q&A, but as you know, we're a big community now, so I do have to sort of keep everyone up to speed with everything that's going on. A little bit of housekeeping. I've actually been receiving phone calls, not just from Australia, but from the US, and I actually received, it's not uncommon, but it doesn't happen all that regularly, but then last week I received 2 phone calls from 2 separate Americans from different parts in America, fortunately not in the middle of the night, which was good. But anyway, these people were seeking private lessons. They couldn't find an option within my online booking form. They couldn't find a time to allocate a private lesson with me, and they were concerned that my online booking system was broken. Folks, it's not broken, it's just that I am booked solid for the next, certainly for the next 6 weeks. But here's the thing, you can just keep checking. So certainly I don't have any, as it currently stands on winter solstice, the 21st of June, 2021, I currently don't have any availabilities for regular recurring sessions. But of course life happens, and so for my recurring students, you know, they have cancellations, whether it be because they're sick or they're going on holidays or for whatever reason. And so there are ad hoc, you know, opportunistic session times that come up. So if you are wanting a lesson, you can, a private lesson, you can always just keep an eye on that online booking form, and it's always current. It's always as up to date as it's ever going to be. So you can always just keep checking. I know that's not as convenient as we would like it to be, but nonetheless, I just want to all let you know that my online booking system is not broken. I'm just full. The other thing too is if you are wanting, you know, some instruction, and you think, you know, I want to first of all have the private lessons, what you can do is get yourself started with the online singing course, which you're seeing the link, you know, traveling along the bottom of the page right now at voiceessentials.com.au, and you can always start the online courses if you're keen, and you can start the journey of your vocal development. And then hopefully as time goes along, we'll be able to then find you a private lesson time. And really I do step students along the very same pathway. So private students are working their way along the very same pathway of learning that is in the online courses. The big difference being that I'm giving direct feedback and assessing and correcting and refining and directing in the private lessons. So anyway, I just wanted to let you all know about that. The other thing you also need to be aware of is this is the last lesson for semester 1 here in the Southern Hemisphere. We always break our years into 2 semesters, semester 1 being the first half of the calendar year, semester 2 being the second. And I'm about to take 2 weeks annual, well, it'll be 1.5 weeks annual leave. Next week, I will be doing a whole heap of pre-recording. As you know, I do pre-record videos on a whole range of subjects to do with voice and the development of your singing. You know, I really research and, you know, really get into the nitty-gritty, far more so than we're even able to do during our live hangouts. And so anyway, I'm doing pre-records beginning of next week, and then after that I'm going for a bit of a holiday, and which I'm taking some time off, which will be, do I say, well earned. It's been a funny start of the year, but anywho, looking forward to that. So we will come back together in 3 weeks, and we'll kick off the next term with a Q&A. And so another one of what we're doing today. And then we're going to have, you know, as we do, we've got live guests. Our next live guest is a lovely woman by the name of Nadine. She's from Sydney, and she's a fellow Aussie pedagogue. And we're going to be talking about a really important subject, and that is we're going to be talking about transgender voice. And you'll have noticed, and in fact, it every now and then it gets picked up or noted by those of you in the comments or in the live chat, that on occasion you'll see my name and it'll have a pronoun next to it. It'll have a him and his, and if I've got guests, I always ask them what their pronouns are. And so we're going to be talking a bit more about that. Here at Voice Essentials, I seek to make this place a safe space for everyone. And of course, part of that is those who are working or on the journey of transgender voice. And so I'm getting Nadine in because Nadine is doing research. She's a fellow. She's doing a fellowship at the Queensland Conservatorium. She'll correct me when she comes on. And so we're going to talk about that subject. Now, I'll just give you a heads up. When we come to talking about that subject, we are going to be very appropriate. We're going to be very careful in the way we manage what can be a very sensitive topic, not only for those within the LGBTQI plus community, but what can also be a sensitive topic for those who may not hold to the thoughts and the ideals that we're going to talk through. And so I am denied over whether we'll be having live chat during this session, given the level of the sensitivity. I've decided that in seeking to maintain the interactivity and the supportive nature of the community, we are going to be having a live chat, but Linda and I have already spoken about this, Linda being our very trusted moderator, and Linda has been given full authority to immediately not only remove inappropriate comment or challenging comment, but also to block. And I just want to give you a heads up about that. And this is not going to be applicable for, well, she has this authority already, but we're going to be very, very intentional in a few weeks' time when we talk about transgender voice, and it is all about making it a safe, respectful, and really inquisitive discussion, because you and I are going to learn a lot about transgender voice from Nadine when she comes on. Little heads up about what's coming. But yeah, so look, if you haven't already, make sure, if you want to be reminded about our live hangouts together every Monday, 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, you do have to subscribe to the channel and hit the white bell icon so that when I go live, YouTube will send you the notifications just so you don't miss a beat. But of course, there won't be anything live for the next 2 weeks while I'm on holiday. I think that's all the stuff that we've got to cover for today, which is good. So let's get into Q&A. Okay, Q&A, here we go. Now we've already got, oh my goodness, look at how many questions we have got. I'm just seeing Linda telling me we've got a little bit of buffering, but that might, yeah, Linda, that might be just you. I don't know. Suddenly, so far so good. For those of you who watch the show regularly, you'll know that oh dear, the ongoing tech issues. I think we've mostly sorted them out, which is fantastic. But I have to admit, every time we come live, I get a little bit nervous and stressed just because of the tech. Now, for those of you who absolutely must have your question answered, you will need to throw in a super chat. Now, the super chat, it's a supportive way for you to support the channel, but it'll also make sure you get your question answered. And I can see we already have 8 questions, and if memory serves me correctly, Linda, that's about as many questions as we typically get through. So if you really want your question answered today, I think a super chat might be the way to go. And Linda is telling me that it probably is her end, which is good regarding the tech. Jumping in, Mary Gooden. What are the different voice types, and how would a person go about figuring out their voice type? Well, first of all, Mary, you could jump over to my video, and it's literally, I think, titled, "What Voice Type Am I?" And it will step you through in detail about how to identify your voice type. Now, I happened to see your question before we came on, and it just so happens that at the moment I am reading this tome called The Voice Clinic Handbook by Tom Harris and edited by Tom Harris and David Howard. It's quite detailed. It's quite deep. Anywho, I've been really enjoying the read, and as I tend to do, I tend to read these things cover to cover. I don't think this book is designed to be read cover to cover because it's more of a text sort of reference book, but you know, that's how boring life can be for Dr. Dan. So, anywho, so I'm reading this at the moment, and I just happened to flick ahead into the next chapter, which I'm about to start reading, which is called Singing and Therapy, and it's by Sarah Harris. I think this chapter is by by Dinah Harris, with contributions from Dane Chafflin. Dane being a singing voice specialist in the UK, Dinah Harris being also in the UK. This is a UK book. Anywho, and at the end there's an appendix, Mary, and it goes. It literally it says singers voice types in classical opera. Can we see that? No, is that? Oh, hang on a sec. There we go. Singers voice type in classical opera. Now, when we contextualize voice type within the framework of classical voice or operatic voice, we really mostly we'll talk about it in regards to Fach. Got to be very careful how we say that word. It's spelled F-A-C-H. The Fach is a German voice type classification system. I cannot remember exactly. I mentioned the exact classification stratas that are within the German Fach system in the video that I've just mentioned. But anywho, I'll give you an idea. So within soprano, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll just give you an idea. So soprano, which is just an umbrella term, is broken into light, high soprano or soubrette, coloratura, lyric, spinto, dramatic, and heavy dramatic. So that's 6 separate voice types, all within the soprano. Now this is because within the classical space, the pieces, the roles, well, the pieces and the roles are written to the voice classification specifically. So it's not enough to just say this is for a soprano. No, it'll be this is for a coloratura soprano. Yeah, so and it goes through here: mezzo, soprano, contralto, counter, tenor, baritone, bass, mezzo, belter, alto. Oh, so this is for so then with the musical theatre voice. Now, can I just say, I grabbed this because, Mary, of your question, but you know, if I was to pick up, there's a countless other books on my shelf, right? And we could pick up and come up with a slightly varied, you know, classification approach, but they'll be generally the same. Now, in this book, they then go to the point of saying classifying according to music theatre. And so they say this is different to as if we were going to classify for classical or opera. So for music theatre, they're breaking it down into, and this is where this is more closely aligned with what you'll see in the video that I give, and that is they classify it into soprano, mezzo, alto, tenor, baritone, and bass. And they're the 6 voice types that I talk about and use as labels, general labels, and this is a really important point. These are all general. Your voice is unique. And so within contemporary vocal, we're a little bit looser in our classification, and you can hear that from the fact that we've gone from classical and opera, which is very specific. Then we get a little looser with music theatre, and then we get, and this is where we get to this final classification. I'm trying to hold this up here so you can see. Singers' voice types in rock pop. So that little paragraph is notice that there's actually nothing nominated here. Let me read this to you. Typically, singers in rock pop are either referred to as high or low, male or female, light or heavy, without any formal subcategories. As there are no standard roles like in opera or musical theatre, the lines are much more blurred. The classification tends to be driven by genre and the aesthetic qualities of the voice. Could not agree more, absolutely. It's funny because in the comments, and there's, I think last time I looked there was, I don't know, there was some crazy tens of thousands of comments on this particular video that I keep referencing, the what voice type am I video. Because there has been coming up to 1.5 million views on that video. Anywho, the funny thing about the comments is there's a lot of people that say, oh, you can't classify the voice for contemporary voice. Do you know what? And I say that if you watch the whole video, you'll kind of hear me say that very thing, where I actually make, not the same point as exactly what's written here, but the voice is, your voice is unique. And to classify it is to put it in a box. Now that has its place. If you, even in contemporary voice, if you want to participate in a contemporary choir, if you want to participate in an ensemble, if you are in a band and you've got, 4 singers and you work a lot with harmonies, which harmony are you going to take? Even then, it can be a pick and choose. It doesn't need to necessarily go specifically to voice type. But the point being is there are times when knowing what your voice type is really beneficial. But it's all within, necessary limits and not being constrained to those and going, well, as a beginner singer, I'm a baritone and therefore I'm always going to be a baritone. Well, anatomically, that may well be the case. However, it has happened, and this does not happen a lot, and I want to be clear on that point as well. It has happened for me in the past where a person comes in, presents for vocal analysis, we have a listen to the voice, we have a listen to the highest note, lowest note, and as a beginner singer with no technique, very little experience, the voice presents as what we might classify as baritone. But then, as we start to free the voice technically at a muscular level, and they start to be able to work across their registers, access upper registers into falsetto, and this takes time, this doesn't happen in the first couple of lessons, then the voice starts to open up, and hey presto, they discover what's called a new orientation of their prima voce. If you watch the video about what voice type am I, I'll go into prima voce for you in the video. But what we start to observe is, oh, hang on a second, what the voice presented to in its absolute rawest, undeveloped state may not be where the voice settles, technically reinforced, and therefore, now a baritone is I don't think I've ever seen a baritone, suddenly reorientate to be a tenor, but certainly we may find them, slide up towards what's called a baritenor, or which is, as you probably are guessing, halfway between, it's a high baritone, some might call it a low tenor. But you can see how we massage these terms, right? Now that's all really important for, as we said, for ensemble work, for choirs, for, if you're in your worship team at church. But if you are a soloist, your reason for knowing your voice types is quite limited. And furthermore, if you write your own material, like if you are a singer-songwriter, who cares what your voice type is? I mean, where we are in search of highly refined, unique signature sound. And so certainly there is value in you discovering your vocal parameters. Where can you sing all night comfortably, and that's important to know, your prima voce. And where are your extreme notes? And then it's also good to be able to write your songs according to where your voice sits. But can I also say, as we move on, I'll move on to the next question in just a moment, from Lakshdeep S. When we... now I've lost my train of thought. I no, it's gone. If I remember, I'll come back to it. Let's go to Lakshdeep. Sorry, everyone. As I'm doing these shows, I'm thinking of a million things at once. Anyway, back to Lakshdeep. Sir, how can we find our natural voice placement? Because when I speak or sing songs, I don't feel vibrations anywhere. Please help me out. Yeah, it's an interesting question. Finding vocal placement, and going back about 10 years, it would be about 10 years ago, the term placement got a real beating amongst singing teachers, particularly in the online, hallowed halls of online, voice groups on Facebook and whatever. And, placement's a bad word, blah, blah, blah. I've always used the word placement, I have to say. I always give an explanation as to the use of the term. So when I talk about placement, I'm using it in a very metaphorical way. So placement, the voice doesn't place anywhere, and this is where it came under fire. But as your sound created by the vocal folds, oscillating at tremendous oscillation rates per second, travels along the vocal tract and travels through the vocal tract and out into the big bad world. And as it does so, for many singers, we kind of get a sense of where the voice is sitting. And so, for example, if I'm doing a forward placed activity, now I'm humming, and I'm intentionally sitting or placing the voice forward in behind my lips. But have a listen, I can also place that into the back room, as Kenneth Bozeman calls it, the back room of the voice, the back of the throat, the pharynx, and it would sound like this. You can hear me moving that placement, the position of the sound, with my tongue. And so I'm identifying the difference of that placement in accordance with the sensation and where that feels. Where I think the term placement may have come under fire a little bit was because often when I start working with a student around placement, that there is an intuitive misinterpretation of the word to be pushment. So for example, pushment would be okay, so I'm pushing voice because we think, okay, I've got to get it up and I've got to get it forward, and so I'm going to push the voice up into that but it's not actually. It's learning to allow your breath pressure to reduce, even flow of air, but allowing the voice to travel. Now interestingly, and this is a side point, even though I'm feeling the placement in what people would refer to as the mask, so in behind the buzzy of the lips, actually there is no sound coming through the lips. All of the sound on a hum is actually coming through my nasal cavity. Now that might frighten some of you who are always scared of nasality, but in fact, an M, an N, and an NG, all in the English language, are all nasalized. And so this is a forward-placed sound, the hum, that is nasalized. Side note. So anywho, so in learning to find that sense of placement, there's a little bit of experimentation that we need to kind of go through in order to sort of identify that. I would encourage you to do a little bit of work, if you can, with a singing teacher or an experienced singer who can maybe help you explore that a little bit more. I do go into placement within the online course, and you might want to check that out if that's something you're thinking you might like to do. Sha'ami Amini, I give it a go because your name is important to me, but my pronunciation is rarely on task. Sir, I'm in my early 20s now. I'm an extreme beginner. You're a beginner for singing, but I really want to become a professional in this field, but I feel nervous that I'm too late for it with my age. Hope you can always advise. Now, in fact, I caught Mackenzie Kate, Mackenzie's a long time watcher and engaged person within the channel, a really well-known person here at Voice Essentials. I saw her response to you in the chat earlier in the show, and I really want to encourage you to take on board what Mackenzie said, and that is Mackenzie identified that she too is in her early 20s. She's, Mackenzie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Mackenzie has enrolled in a music theatre program at university level and is currently working her way through the development towards a career in singing. And she's doing this in her early 20s. You know, I know that to a certain extent, within this world of singing, it can be a bit of a young person's game, and I do appreciate that. But can I say to you, as someone who is well beyond their early 20s, that, you know, your boat has not set sail yet. You do have time, and it really comes down to, in fact, can I encourage you to go back and watch last week's live hangout where we had special guest Danielle Tucker. It was such a good show where we talked about being a gigging singer, and we both Danielle and I shared sort of, you know, some of our journey along how we became professional singers, and I think you'll get a lot out of that show if you haven't already seen it. But I want to encourage you that, firstly, it is never too late to sing. Never. Now, what can be determined by some is whether you are too old, too young. You know, it all depends on where you want to sing professionally. There are so many different, aspects to this that will determine, whether you're sort of aiming at the right target. And I guess that's what I'd say to you is make sure that you pick your target from an age point of view and be appropriate to that. You know, if you step out into the gigging scene, in fact, my wife, myself, my two youngest children, we went to a place here in Brisbane called Eat Street. It's sort of like, it's hard to explain Eat Street. I had never been before. Eat Street's been around for a long time. It's sort of like a market, a permanent market villa kind of open air eatery. Hard to describe, all out of shipping containers. So well done, had a great night, and as a part of that whole thing, they have live music. There was one band on where the two female lead vocals, they would not be described as spring chickens. They were older, but they were good. I really enjoyed listening to them. They were obviously knew what they were doing, well experienced, and I thought, at the time I even thought, well, there it is again. Age does not need to be what restricts you from doing this singing thing. So I just say to you, go for it. Don't hold back. Set your course. Be prepared to renegotiate and re-navigate when it's appropriate. But yeah, go for it. Okay, I've got a question here from Matt. Oh, it's like a co-conspiratory question from Matt and Mackenzie. It's a weather question. Does heat have a negative effect on the voice, as in hot weather? And Mackenzie then's added to that, what does cold weather do to the voice? Good question. So it's more about how the weather affects our body. Always remembering our body is our instrument. So let me give you an example. For those of you who don't know, I play guitar. I'm not an advanced guitarist by any stretch, but I can strum chords together. And one thing I was taught very, very young as a guitarist was never leave your guitar in its case. Firstly, never leave your guitar in a case at all, unless it's traveling. And if you are traveling with your guitar in its case, don't leave it in a hot vehicle or in the sun or whatever, because what happens is the guitar will sweat. So, and that is, the moisture within the case and within the wood, especially with younger guitars, it'll actually sweat. And this is not good for the guitar. It warps the wood, and it's very bad for it. And this is a really great rule of thumb for us to remember as singers, that wherever we take our instrument, us being the instrument, there is an impact, good, bad, ugly, on the voice. So in cold weather, typically cold weather, we have dry. It's not only cold, so we can find ourselves constricting and becoming tight in our body because our body wants to, conserve heat. But also, more often than not, the air that we're breathing is really dry, particularly if you step into, heated spaces where there's a heater on or a furnace or a fire. So that's the first thing. Whereas in hot weather, what we can find is that we can become equally dehydrated because our body is trying to keep itself cool, and so it's using all the hydration that we're putting in, where we're just getting rid of it through sweat, and so our larynx doesn't quite get the level of lubrication that we need. And in both contexts, we must remember hydration. It's, I know singing teachers, we harp on about this thing called water intake, but you got to drink your water, singers, because if you don't, the voice suffers. The reason we need the voice to remain lubricated is because if there is a reduction in the level of lubrication, in the viscosity of lubrication that is being secreted over the surface of the vocal folds, what happens is there is an increase in friction by, when the vocal folds come together. What does friction do? Friction creates heat, and heat can create an increase, an acceleration of wear and tear for the voice. And so these are all things that you need to be, considerate of. And so extreme temperatures for us human beings, the reality is we don't cope too well. And so, work towards, keeping your temperature on an even keel and hydrate. Okay, I'm looking here, 1:37 and all tech is good. Music to my ears, Linda. Okay, John, how should we rate our talents as vocal coaches? John, I am going to need a clarification on that question, because I'm not dodging it. I actually don't know what you're asking. Linda, can I have a clarification on that question, please? Oh dear, look at okay. We're up to question 5, everyone, and we've got 10 minutes, and we're up to 21 questions asked. We're going to only get a couple more in. So again, if you absolutely need your question answered today, the super chat is the way to go about that. Okay, Antonio, I smoke a lot of weed and cigarettes. Dr. Dan, do you have any tips on how to keep my throat healthy despite my addictions? Antonio, no, I'm sorry. You know, and I, you know, being in the industry that we are, I am not naive to understanding that there are a lot of musicians and singers, and this certainly in Australia, this is becoming less and less because Australia has been very proactive in seeing the reduction of people smoking. However, I'm very cognizant of the fact that other cultures, other countries in the world, not so much, and certainly I don't want you to hear my response as being what would be the right way to say? I don't want you to hear my response as being prejudiced towards you or judgmental. I don't have any, you know, soapbox to stand on in my response other than your health. And that is, firstly, tobacco smoking has been proven to cost lives. And I acknowledge not every life, but it really heightens the risk of the development of not only lung cancer, but also mouth cancer, esophageal cancer, laryngeal cancer. It's not a good thing. And you almost certainly already know that. The thing with, and one of the reasons for that is, well, let me say, when we sing and smoke, we are exacerbating the issue because the drying of the vocal folds gives more. There's someone at my studio door. I can't get to you right now. Oh, okay, Robinson D. Thank you. Oh, that was hilarious. Okay, obviously a delivery. So where were we? Talking about tobacco smoke. And that is that what do they say? Never do anything live. Anyway, the funniest things happen here on the live show. So with tobacco smoke, we exacerbate the challenge of that carcinogenic effect. Anywho, when it comes to weed, the interesting thing about smoking marijuana is marijuana burns, you know, pot burns significantly hotter. I don't know the chemistry or the physics behind all of this, but I do know that weed will burn significantly hotter than tobacco. And so where pot and weed, marijuana, I'm not certain of the carcinogenic effects, but I do know that it will essentially sear the edge of the vocal folds. So it's a bit like getting a fresh piece of steak onto a hot plate and going and so it actually burns the edge of the vocal folds. You will know that if you try to sing after a session of, you know, doing a couple of sticks of pot or however you take it, you will experience a difference in the voice. So that's the thing with pot. Can I add to this the discussion of vaping? And I know, you know, look, there's a lot of discussion online, and you'll find supportive evidence from, you know, all sorts of parties, as we once did about tobacco, it must be said. Any foreign object that you intentionally inhale is going to have an impact on the voice. And when we vape, we are molecularizing, is that the right word? the substance, the chemicals, often they're oils and what have you, and that is coating not only your vocal folds but your vocal tract. And certainly some of the studies that I have read, not many, but the ones that I have read are quite negative in their findings around this. This also goes for, fog juice, when, performing, and they use it for lighting so that we can see laser beams and all that sort of stuff. That's also not great for the voice and for the vocal tract and the lungs. So there is no safe way to smoke tobacco. There's no safe way to smoke weed. I think time is going to really, show that there's no safe way to vape, and so I encourage you, if possible, because as you highlight, these are addictions, and tobacco is incredibly addictive. I would encourage you to do your best to seek a pathway to giving these addictions up, because not only will your voice improve as a result, your health will improve, and you can't sing if you're dead. There you go. Okay, one more. Now, did we get... I want to come down here because I want to answer John's question. Did we get a clarification from John, Linda? I'm not seeing one. Linda might be putting... John, I am going to try to answer your question because you got in, but I'm going to go to Antonio, then I'm going to come back to John. Okay, so Antonio, that was Antonio. Okay, Nicole. Where are we going? Hello, the back of my throat has been dry, scratchy, and has phlegm as well. Could this be from air conditioners and fans? I'm worried I've hurt my cords, and I haven't ever had vocal issues. Yeah, it could be from air conditioning. Well, I wouldn't. It's unlikely that the air conditioning is the primary contributor. It may well be exacerbating what might be the phlegm is probably the kicker here, where I would go, okay, what's causing the phlegm? Firstly, that's probably your smoking gun. So identifying what's causing the phlegm. So the phlegm, there's three main, not only, but three main contributors to phlegm. Firstly, dehydration. So people don't realize just how gunky we become when we're dehydrated, and it's because the mucosal layer starts to sort of gel up. It's not as, the vocal tract isn't as lubricated, and so we start to feel phlegmy. Secondly, it actually can be due to allergies, and so depending on where you are in the world, perhaps you are experiencing some allergies. I know that for the last 24 hours I've been taking a topical nasal spray because there's something, I don't know, there's something in the dry air that we're experiencing here in the middle of winter that something set me off. And so I was starting to be constantly clearing gunk. A topical nasal spray, really helpful to me. The third main way is reflux. So reflux can actually cause your vocal tract to respond in a protective sense to try and reduce the burning of LPR, laryngeal pharyngeal reflux. And so that can leave you feeling phlegmy and gunky. So you kind of got to go and identify, well, what's causing the phlegm? The phlegm, because we then often experience that as something that we've got to constantly clear away, that's where we start to get, constricted. And that's what then leads often to the dry and scratchy sensation that you're experiencing. So I would backtrack, go find the cause of your phlegm, deal with the phlegm, and then and this is going to take you days, if not weeks, to really bring about a solution. And then I'd also just, in the meantime, do your best to not clear. If you're constantly clearing the throat, that's just going to reinforce and exacerbate the swelling that's already there. So try to keep it all clear. So I'm getting a message here from John. Didn't clarify, not too fast if you don't answer it. Cool, okay. Oh, everyone, just a moment, because Linda is asking how you evaluate yourself as a vocal coach. Okay. So if within that context, how should we rate our talent as vocal coaches? It's interesting that I'm not going to name names, but there is a singing teacher on YouTube at the moment, a highly successful YouTube channel. And this person, in their advertising, is calling themselves the world's best singing teacher. Now, we'll finish today's show with these thoughts. Can I let you know? So my response to that labeling is, according to who? Now, there are national bodies for singing teachers. I know here in Australia we have the Australian National Association for Teachers of Singing. ANATS is the national body. Now, ANATS is not an accredited or regulatory body. It's a professional association that many singing teachers from across the country are members of. I was the vice national president and the national treasurer for a number of years, going back a little while now. And there's a second group that I have only recently finished being the national president for, the Australian Voice Association, which is an eclectic professional association of ear, nose and throat doctors, laryngologists, speech pathologists, physiotherapists, singing teachers, a whole range of voice-focused professionals like myself. Can I tell you, neither of those two bodies hand out awards for Australia's best singing teacher. And I'm fairly certain, now I could be wrong, happy to be corrected on this, but I'm fairly certain that so two of the main groups in America would be NATS, the National Association for Teachers of Singing. The other one would be the Voice Foundation, which is kind of a bit like the AVA, the Australian Voice Association, which I was the national president for. I don't think either of those groups, which are NATS, would be the leading professional association for teachers of singing in the US. To my knowledge, neither of those groups hand out the moniker for world's best singing teacher. So we do have to be very careful when we see this sort of, advertising and self-labeling online. So, and I've said this to you many times before, I am not the world's best singing. I'm not Australia's best singing teacher. In part because there is no authoritative labeling that one could successfully call oneself that. I am a leader, and you'll hear me use this language. I am a leader within the Australian singing teaching community. I think that's safe to say. But there is no one person that can call themselves the world's greatest or the world's best or what have you. So what you if you're looking for a singing teacher, whether it be here online, whether it being in your local community, what you want to go looking for in that person is you want to go in search of someone. Firstly, you want to go in search of someone who is authentic in the way they're presenting themselves, right? And so the point that we've just been making is authenticity is important. It's important that, you know, I am not disingenuous with you as an audience, that I don't tell you that I know something. Firstly, for example, when I don't, or I don't try to make up an answer when I don't know, that but that you go looking for someone who you can trust. And this is also very difficult, because when you yourself are not a singing teacher, who do you know who is right? That can be challenging. Well, one of the ways that you can do is find out, is that person a part of their national association? So again, in Australia, it would be ANATS. Is the singing teacher a member of ANATS? This is not the be-all and end-all of whether a person is a good singing teacher or not, but it at least tells you that they're keen, they're focused on professional development. This world of singing teaching is moving at a really consistent, accelerated rate. We continue to learn. This is why I read these books, because there is so much to know, right? And now I reckon so far I'm halfway through this book. I reckon 25% of what I've read, maybe, because there's laryngology speak here, there's laryngeal Jacob Lieberman has got there's stuff in here that I have not read a lot on. So there's quite a bit in here that I don't know, which is why I'm reading it. But equally, there's quite a bit in here that I did know, and so it's great for me to refresh that knowledge and bring it back to the forward placement of my, there's that term again, forward placement of my brain, so that I'm constantly keeping the currency of that knowledge in place. So that's one way that you can really identify a great singing teacher, is what are they doing to develop their own teaching? Are they another thing that you could be asking is, are they a singing teacher, or are they, for example, a piano teacher who kind of teaches some singing on the side? Now, that again, none of this, no answers to these, right or wrong, yes or no, will of itself determine whether they're going to be a good singing teacher or not. What you're trying to do is build a bit of a picture for yourself to give you some insight into what to expect from your lessons from this person. But if someone is again making statements about, it's a bit like, I don't know what you think when you see a sign that says world's best coffee, stop here. I'm unlikely to stop to have a coffee at that venue. Any place that says world's best coffee, probably not. Maybe, but probably not. And so that's not to say they don't serve coffee, and they almost certainly don't just serve, dehydrated granular gunk. They probably still serve, espresso through a proper coffee machine. But it's unlikely that they're serving the world's best coffee. And so we do have to be careful in buying into some of the commentary here online. And so always seek out, and there are plenty of us here on YouTube. I'm not the only one. There are plenty of us who are delivering authentic, well-researched, information you can stake, plant your feet on, plant your voice on, Yeah, so go seeking those voices as opposed to perhaps voices that need to be a bit more careful in how they're selling themselves. There you go. Well, that was an interesting way to finish our last Q&A for semester 1. Reminder, we are not going to be here for the next 2 weeks as I go on a bit of a break, but we are going to be back in 2 weeks' time. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up for today's show if you've enjoyed it. Do not forget to hit the white bell icon. It's the white bell icon. That's kind of almost the most important bit, so that you get reminded when we're going live, because I don't want you to miss a show. I love hanging out with you all, and I very much hope that you remain safe, happy, and well over the next few weeks. Until we meet again, I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.